In this episode, we speak with Kevin Bhatt, managing partner at Longridge Equity Partners, a specialist growth equity firm focused on the financial and business technology sectors. Kevin joined Longridge in 2010 and serves as a managing partner and member of the firm's investment committee. He leads the overall strategic direction of the firm and oversees deal teams responsible for sourcing, evaluating, and managing portfolio companies. Throughout his investing career, Kevin has served on the boards of numerous public and private financial and business services companies, working closely with visionary leadership teams to build category-defining businesses. Longridge was recognized by GrowthCap as a top growth equity firm of 2024. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you liked the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the managing partner of GrowthCap and the executive chairman of Market Insight Media. He is the host of Growth Investor, a podcast featuring today's best investors, executives, and founders. In the minutes ahead, we'll uncover insights and strategies for accelerating growth and succeeding in business.
Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
RJ, thanks so much for inviting us. We're pleased to be here.
I was mentioning before we hit record here, we've been following Longridge for quite some time. I've had a chance to interact with some of your team members. I've always had very nice interactions with your firm. Maybe just to kick off, we'll get into the background and history of Longridge, but maybe just tell us how you would describe what it's like to be part of the Longridge team.
Oh, it's a great question. One of the things that has been very special about growing and building the firm these last 15 years has been the continuity that we've had as an organization. So as a firm, we've always hired at the most junior levels and promoted from within. So all of our VPs, principals, and partners started as analysts and associates when they were very early in their careers. So that means that day to day, there's just this incredible sense of a shared goal, shared values, and approaches that makes it a really fun place and a true family atmosphere for all of us who come to work here every day at Longridge.
And you were founded in 2007. Maybe can you give us some background as to the reason why it was founded and what the goal was?
Sure. Maybe I'll take you a little bit further back to the genesis of the firm. So I started out in private equity in 2002 when my partner, Jim Brown, my current partner, hired me out of McKinsey to be his associate at an early growth capital firm. Jim led the firm's financials practice back then, and we worked on a couple great deals in a space that was just beginning to be called financial technology. And those first few deals in financial technology really laid the groundwork for the focus area and approach that we have at Longridge to this day. So the firm, Jim founded in 2007, and I rejoined him in the beginning of 2010, really with this idea of filling a void in the market to provide growth capital, sort of a playbook around professionalization and building firms in a space that had really been vacated by some of the larger growth-oriented private equity firms in the ensuing, kind of half decade. So the firm's focus has really since inception been around growth stage companies in the financial and business technology verticals, the idea of partnering with very often founder-led bootstrap companies and helping them professionalize and achieve the next level of scale and success in their businesses.
And you're playing in a space that is kind of competitive. I mean, there's some movement in and out of kind of this segment of the market. How have you found it to change over the last, call it 15 years when you first started to present day?
It's night and day. In the early days, there were very few folks calling on these growth stage entrepreneurs with a real focus on and interest in their businesses. And today, there are obviously many firms that are focused on technology sectors and growth businesses, and their organizations are designed to conduct outreach to these companies. So it's a different and more competitive market, which is, I think, called on firms like ours and frankly, all of the folks in this space to really refine the areas where they focus and be clear-eyed about where they can really drive differentiated outcomes for their management partners. And so for us, that's been a great process around being relentlessly focused on a handful of sub-verticals that are, in many cases, difficult to understand, require real deep sector expertise, and where our networks are truly differentiated and we can drive real outcomes for our management team partners in terms of business development interactions and introductions, in terms of professionalization of their go-to-market functions, and in terms of really laying the groundwork for that next stage of scaling. It has become more competitive, but I'd say in many ways, the founders have become more discerning in looking through and understanding who's really going to provide more than capital to them as they think about selecting a partner. And for us, one great part of being at this now for 15 years is that we've got, roughly 30 entrepreneurs who have trusted us with their businesses and have chosen us to be their partners. And to date, we've exited over half of those investments. We've had great outcomes alongside those partners. And when we speak to new entrepreneurs, the next generation of leaders that we hope to back, it's been an amazing thing for them to be able to reach out to those prior generation of Long Ridge partners, Long Ridge management teams, and understand what the value add has been, understand what the work style has been. And that's really been a big differentiator for us.
When you think about, and maybe we could take this in the two broad sectors that you're focused on, financial technology and business technology. When we think about financial technology, is there a particular deal, portfolio company you invested in where you look back at the value you were able to provide to that company and it gives you a sense of satisfaction that Long Ridge did a good job?
There are quite a few that we're really proud of, but one in particular that I can think of is a business called Broadway Technology. Broadway Technology is a leader in fixed income and FX trading infrastructure for tier one global banks. And the founders of that business were incredibly pedigreed computer scientists and traders who built a world-class business serving the most discerning banks in the world and doing so in a very quiet way. They built a really nice company over roughly 15 years without a lot of fanfare and without a lot of awareness in the broader, sort of financial technology landscape. We got to know the three founders about a year and a half before we invested in the business and developed a deep relationship with them and really tried to show a lot of value in terms of introducing them to folks who could be helpful in shaping their vision for the business and executing against their plan. By the time we actually invested in 2018, we already had a really clear view as to what we try to accomplish together. And over the next 3 years, we set out to do just that. We professionalized the C-suite. So this group of three founders had a great view as to where each of them had superpower and were really driving amazing outcomes. And then also the areas where they needed to augment and build out the team. So we were able to bring in a new president and COO from our extended network of industry advisors. We were able to augment the go-to-market functions and really raise their profile in the marketplace. And then importantly, start to develop the strategic argument as to Broadway being an indispensable part of the financial technology landscape for strategic acquirers. So over the course of the next 3 years, the business scaled incredibly well, but importantly became a very well-known part of the ecosystem and a true player in the space, such that when the founders came to us and said, hey, we think it's time to consider a transaction, we were able to work together to achieve a great outcome for them and for the Long Ridge Fund. So an amazing outcome for the business and a true partnership between the founders of that company and Long Ridge.
I'm curious, when part of the value add is finding the right people, key people to put them in important positions to help scale the company, that can also be a somewhat tenuous situation if the fit doesn't go well. And maybe perhaps it's someone who's coming from large corporate and going to a smaller company. How do you ensure that there will be, or increase the probability that there will be, a good fit?
That's a fantastic observation. One of the things that we've observed is that there is a skill set that's demonstrable on someone's resume. And you can see that they led a great sales force or that they scaled a division of a large corporation 2 or 3x. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be super successful in partnering with an entrepreneur in scaling their business. And we've found over time that as much of the outcome is driven by the interpersonal fit, the trust, the personal dynamic and chemistry, as it is by the hard skills that they bring to bear in the portfolio company. So as investors, we do both minority investments and majority investments, but in all cases, we are incredibly consensus driven. We don't believe we have all the answers, and we don't think that we know 100% who's the right fit for another business leader. So in most of our companies where we've been able to augment a C-suite, let's say around a founder around an existing management team, it's been a process of introducing several people from our network and trying to figure out, who's a great match, who's going to bring out the best in that founder, and who over the course of maybe months or quarters can build a lot of trust and a lot of chemistry with that founder such that they're going to be a really effective team together. Where that's worked, and it's worked much more often in our experience than it hasn't, it's been an incredible force multiplier for those founding teams and for those management teams.
Mm-hmm. Now, are there certain areas of technology that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, over the last 15 years, I'd say my partner Jim and I have led deals across most of the subsectors where Longridge is focused, so across the financial and business technology verticals. But as we've grown and as we've developed more and more internally developed deal partners, we've all kind of specialized, and we found some areas where we can spend maybe a disproportionate part of our time. So for me, over the last 5 or 7 years, that's been primarily in our business technology vertical, and primarily around our businesses that focus on governance, risk, and compliance software and services, cybersecurity software and services, and then a broad set of businesses that are a little harder to explain that we call our N of one businesses. So these are companies that very often dominate a small but strategically important segment of the financial or business technology landscape. It might be a small TAM, but our view is that it will become strategically valuable and important over time. And so that's been a great part of our practice area here, is finding and growing and developing those kind of N of one businesses over time.
Part of the reason why we do these podcasts is so that folks in the audience, whether they're founders or LPs or family offices, they get to know the investor. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Maybe did you always think growing up you'd head into finance or investing?
Not at all. So I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, where, the concept of private equity, much less investment banking or management consulting, was not the focus for many of my peers. And it really wasn't until I got to college that I even knew that this industry existed. I was really fortunate growing up to have some amazing guidance from my father, who was an amazing guy. He grew up in India, came to the United States in the 60s for grad school, and really always raised us to believe that in America, unlike maybe where he'd grown up in India, where there was a caste system and there were preconceived notions about what you could do, in America, you could do truly anything. So when I was growing up, he encouraged me to consider going to college outside of Ohio and outside of the Midwest. And in fact, I remember, the summer before my senior year, he handed me a college guidebook and said, "I'll take you to visit any college in America." And that ended up being a really transformational shift for me, because I ended up going to Princeton, where a little bit more of this ethos, this focus on Wall Street, on the kind of upper echelons of the business world, was in the air. And so I really learned from my peers, folks who, maybe had grown up in the New York metro area or had older siblings that had gone on to these types of careers. So that experience in college was transformational for me in terms of opening my eyes to what might be possible. And then I was really fortunate, after joining a consulting firm, McKinsey, right after college, that Jim Brown, my partner, kind of poached me out of there and said, "Hey, I think that you'd be great in private equity." And here I am 23 years later, and it's been a wonderful adventure, and some great friendships have been developed along the way.
As we mentioned before, it's competitive to be an investor, particularly maybe in this segment of growth equity. What do you attribute your success as an investor to?
I think our firm has been able to explain to founders and to management teams why, in a world that is awash with capital, they might consider partnering with us. And we truly believe that the entrepreneurs leading the best businesses in our space have a choice. And sometimes that choice is made on hard terms of the deal, price and the terms, and that's understandable. But more often we find those things are pretty closely bounded, and that a team is making a decision based on, first and foremost, interpersonally, who do they want to work with? And, we pride ourselves on being people with incredibly high integrity, who try to do the right thing in our interactions with our management teams, with our team members here at Longridge, and our investors. And that kind of pervades our interactions. And they want to be partners with people who are highly aligned with them. So we, unlike maybe some much larger firms that have very large portfolios, we tend to write a really concentrated fund. So a whole fund for us might be 10 or 11 deals. And so it's really nice to be able to sit across the table from a founder who's maybe got 100% of their net worth in a company and say to them, look, if you partner with us, this is really going to matter to us. We're going to have 10 investments in this fund and they've all got to work. And so the full breadth and depth of our firm's resources are going to be dedicated to making your business successful. And that alignment, I think, has been an important driver of the decisions that we've been, honored to be the beneficiary of by these founders. The last thing that's been important for us is just as individuals, we've been really aligned with our investors. We've been over 10% of each of our funds. And we like to be able to say that when we're making a commitment to a portfolio company, that we're committing our LP's capital and we're committing a lot of our own capital. And I think that especially for founders, that tends to resonate with them. It's a differentiator as compared to maybe some larger firms in the space.
I've met with hundreds of investors over the years during my career, and I distinctly remember meeting with your colleagues, and it was just a different feel to the meeting. And I'm curious, and I imagine you've built your firm by really picking unique individuals to join the team. What do you look for in people as you're recruiting?
We're so fortunate that this group of roughly 30 people have chosen to build their careers here at Long Ridge. And when I look at each of them, I'm so impressed by what they bring to the organization. When we were recruiting them and interviewing them, it's hard to look back on one thing that maybe stood out in our minds as the real differentiator, but there's some through lines across everybody here at the firm that I'd say are pretty consistent. First and foremost, we hire just really high quality human beings, people who are kind to others, that truly take an interest in others, and are going to be the kind of folks that you want to sit next to on a plane for the vast majority of your working time. So good human beings is kind of a prerequisite. The second thing that ends up being true of almost everybody at the firm is that they are incredibly, high horsepower, high caliber thinkers. So they can deal with unstructured data. They can think outside the box. They can deal with ambiguity and draw conclusions where maybe things aren't completely lucid in a given moment. So, high caliber thinkers, but and importantly, typically they've never done this before. So we love to hire folks who have never had a job in principal investing, people who are great folks and really smart, but want to learn and want to develop a little bit of the style that we have here at the firm, which is a creative, non-zero sum approach to investing. And that's been a good model for us over the last 15 years.
We're coming up on time. I have two final questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who's had a profound influence on you?
I'd really go back to my dad. I mentioned that he really set me on this path by opening up the world of possibilities to me. And I'd say my dad passed almost 20 years ago now. And I wish I remembered more of the little kernels of wisdom that he, I'm sure, was trying to impart to me. But I do remember one thing he told me, and it's the one thing that I try to share with my friends and younger colleagues, which is that in life, we think that these careers, our friends, our fortunes, that these are going to provide happiness. And what he would always tell me is that in actuality, 90% of your happiness or unhappiness in life actually just comes down to one decision, which is the decision of who you marry and who you choose to partner with in your life. And I'm pretty sure that my dad was right about that. And I'm incredibly fortunate to have married an incredible person who is kind and smart and good at all the things that I'm not. And so if there's one piece of transformational guidance that I've gotten in my life, it was to really focus on making that decision the right one.
Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
One of the things that's brought a lot of meaning to the work that we do in this space and some of the rewards that naturally come with that work has been being able to support causes that are important to us. And in my family, that cause that is of paramount importance is pediatric cancer research. My daughter, Caroline, is a pediatric cancer survivor. She was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer when she was about 3.5 years old and spent the next 2 years in treatment here in New York at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Today, she is an incredibly healthy, engaging 12-year-old who's full of life and energy. And every day, my wife and I are incredibly grateful to the pediatric cancer families that came before us, because in our world, pediatric cancer research really only receives a couple % of federal research dollars. So all of the outcomes that my daughter had were driven by the work that was done by the pediatric cancer families that came before us. So as a mission and as our goal in life, we have focused on the support of pediatric cancer research, specifically around rare tumors. And there's a group at Memorial Sloan Kettering that we've been very involved with. And so we're just so grateful that a group of amazing doctors are hard at work at the next generation of treatments. So hopefully, future families can have an outcome that's every bit as good as the one that my daughter Caroline had, hopefully with, some less toxic and more effective treatments.
Well, Kevin, want to thank you again for taking the time. It's truly been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for inviting me.